Chapter 1. The man on the beach. Mandy Page was good with numbers because numbers rarely lied. Give her a budget spreadsheet with 10,000 line items, and she could find mistakes before most people had finished their first cup of coffee. Give her a quarterly forecast, and she could tell management exactly where expenses were likely to drift off course. People, however, were a completely different category. People smiled when they were annoyed. People said one thing and meant another. People presented polished versions of themselves and conveniently hid everything else. After several disappointing relationships, Mandy had reached a conclusion that felt both honest and slightly depressing. She wasn't necessarily bad at dating. She was bad at evaluating candidates. The realization had earned several laughs from her mother. "You make it sound like you're hiring boyfriends." "I accidentally did," Mandy had replied. Since then, she'd taken a break from dating and settled into comfortable routines. Work, home, books, weekends, and people watching. Her townhouse overlooked one of the most popular areas of Lake Hawthorne. The massive freshwater lake attracted visitors from all over the region. Beaches stretched along the shoreline. Restaurants and shops lined the lakeside road. During summer weekends, tourists filled the boardwalk and rented paddleboards, kayaks, and small boats. From her second-floor balcony, Mandy could watch a surprisingly large section of the beach. It was endlessly entertaining. She kept a pair of binoculars nearby and spent many mornings observing the predictable chaos of humanity. Joggers, dog walkers, parents chasing children, teenagers attempting impressive stunts that usually ended in embarrassment. It was cheaper than television and considerably funnier. 3 weeks earlier, her parents had decided to encourage her hobby. The telescope now standing beside her balcony chair was large enough to make her neighbors mildly concerned. Her father had called it an investment. Her mother had called it a retirement preview. Mandy simply called it amazing. On that Saturday morning, she carried a mug of coffee outside and settled into her chair. The lake shimmered under the early sunlight. A cool breeze drifted across the water. It was shaping up to be a perfect day. Then she noticed the Tae Kwon Do group gathering on the beach. That wasn't unusual. The group met nearly every Saturday. Children wearing crisp white uniforms arrived with parents in tow. They practiced forms, drills, and sparring near one of the quieter stretches of sand. Mandy had watched them dozens of times. Today, however, she had a telescope. Curious, she adjusted the focus. The image sharpened. A man sat stretching in an impressive side split. Mandy blinked. Adjusted focus again. Blinked one more time. No way. The coffee mug paused halfway to her mouth. She leaned closer. The instructor looked completely different without glasses. His hair was slightly longer than it appeared at work. His posture radiated confidence. His expression was relaxed and cheerful. But it was definitely him. Sam Preston. Mandy knew that face. She saw it every weekday. Sam worked in the same manufacturing company she did. He wasn't part of accounting, but their departments crossed paths often. At work, Sam was quiet, reserved, polite to everyone, invisible if he wanted to be. He attended meetings, completed assignments, and disappeared. The man on the beach looked like someone else entirely. As children gathered around him, he smiled easily. He demonstrated movements with remarkable precision. The kids immediately paid attention. Mandy found herself staring. The version of Sam she'd built in her mind suddenly collapsed like a cheap folding chair. The forms began. Kids moved in neat rows. Sam led them from the front. The synchronized motions looked almost graceful against the background of blue water and pale sand. Without sound, the scene felt strange, like an old silent film. That thought made her laugh. Then Sam turned slightly. The sunlight hit his face. No glasses. Calm expression. Strong posture. And something about the transformation triggered an absurd thought. Mandy whispered it before she could stop herself. Clark Kent. She froze, then looked again. The comparison became worse, or better, definitely funnier. Mild-mannered office employee by day, secret martial arts superhero by weekend. She pictured a cape, then imagined him attending budget meetings while secretly fighting crime. The image completely destroyed her self-control. Mandy collapsed backward into her chair laughing. Fortunately, no one could hear her. By the time she recovered, tears had formed in the corners of her eyes. "Oh, that's terrible," she told herself, which only made her laugh again. 20 minutes later, still curious, she made a spontaneous decision. Those were rare. Mandy put on flip-flops, grabbed a sun hat, locked her door, and headed to the beach. The closer she got, the more impressive the class appeared. Children focused intensely on their movements. Parents watched proudly from folding chairs. Sam moved among the students, correcting positions and offering encouragement. His easy smile surprised her most. She had never seen that smile at work. Not once. Mandy found a place in the sand near the parents. Nobody questioned her presence. The class continued. Forms became drills. Drills became partner exercises. Partner exercises became controlled sparring. Throughout the session, Sam remained patient and energetic. The children obviously adored him. Parents frequently smiled whenever he spoke. Watching him felt strangely fascinating. Not because he was attractive, though he definitely was. That was new information. No. What fascinated her was discovering she had been completely wrong. Again, hours of office interaction hadn't taught her what a single Saturday morning had revealed. When the class finally ended, parents collected children and drifted toward parking areas. Several stopped to speak with Sam. He greeted each one warmly. Eventually the crowd began thinning. Mandy stood, brushed sand from her shorts, and walked over. For the first time all morning, nerves appeared. What exactly was she going to say? Congratulations on your secret identity? Fortunately, Sam spotted her before she reached him. His expression brightened immediately. Good morning, Mandy. His casual greeting caught her off guard. She stopped. You don't seem surprised to see me. Should I be? A little. Sam smiled. I've seen you on your balcony. Mandy's eyes widened. You what? Not spying, he said quickly. The balcony is visible from the beach. Good recovery. I practiced that explanation months ago. She laughed despite herself. Sam laughed too. The sound was warm and genuine. Nothing like the quiet coworker she'd known. Mandy folded her arms. I have a question. Dangerous statement. How long have you been secretly Superman? His confusion lasted exactly 1 second. Then realization struck. He groaned. Oh no. You take off the glasses and suddenly you're leading martial arts classes. You compared me to Clark Kent. Immediately. I'm never escaping this, am I? Absolutely not. To her delight, Sam began laughing. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. The kind that made it impossible to maintain dignity. For several moments, both of them stood there grinning like idiots. And for the first time in years, Mandy forgot to analyze someone. She simply enjoyed being surprised. Something told her this Saturday was the beginning of a much more interesting story than she'd expected. Chapter 2. Revised calculations. On Monday morning, Mandy arrived at work 6 minutes earlier than usual. This annoyed her. Not because 6 minutes mattered, but because she knew exactly why she had left the house early. You are not coming in early to look for Sam, she told herself. Her brain immediately replied, then why did you leave early? Mandy ignored herself and walked through the front office. The manufacturing plant was already awake. Through the windows overlooking the shop floor, forklifts moved between workstations. Milling machines hummed in the distance. Phones rang. Printers spat out reports. Employees shuffled toward meetings carrying coffee cups large enough to qualify as construction materials. Normal Monday. She reached her office and settled into her chair. Spreadsheets waited patiently. Numbers behaved exactly the same as they had on Friday. For an hour she worked without interruption. Then she made the mistake of looking toward the hallway. Sam walked past her office carrying a stack of folders. That should not have been interesting. Yet somehow it was. Because now she couldn't unsee Saturday. Instead of quiet office Sam, she saw beach instructor Sam. The man who could apparently fold himself into impossible positions and somehow convince 20 children to voluntarily exercise on a Saturday morning. It was incredibly distracting. A knock sounded on her door. Mandy looked up and immediately regretted it. Because the person standing there was Sam. Good morning. Her brain chose that exact moment to remind her of the phrase Clark Kent. The smile she tried to suppress escaped anyway. Sam narrowed his eyes. No. What? I know that smile. I don't know what you're talking about. You're thinking about it again. Thinking about what? She managed to keep a straight face for nearly 2 seconds. Then she laughed. You really do have supervillain detection powers. Wrong genre. Sorry. Superhero detection powers. That's better. He shook his head. I brought the revised equipment budget. Oh, actual work. I know. Disappointing. Mandy accepted the folder. One day you'll fly through that window and completely destroy your professional reputation. Only if you're there to calculate repair costs. It's literally my job. I thought your job was finding joyless accounting errors. That too. To her surprise, Sam laughed. At work, she rarely heard him laugh. Now she wondered if she'd simply never given him a reason. That thought lingered after he left. Maybe she'd spent too many years deciding who people were before actually learning anything about them. The realization was uncomfortable and annoyingly accurate. Thursday evening found Mandy wandering through Hawthorne Books, one of her favorite stores near the lake. The place smelled like coffee and paper, a dangerous combination for her wallet. She entered looking for one book. She currently carried 4. A familiar voice came from the next aisle. You're holding that upside down. Mandy jumped. The book nearly flew out of her hands. Sam stood nearby holding a basket. His expression suggested he found the situation amusing. It wasn't upside down. It definitely was. I was evaluating the cover design. From the back. Professional technique. Sam looked unconvinced. He examined her growing stack. Planning to purchase the entire store? I'm supporting local business. Very noble. You have books too. He looked down at his basket. Unfortunately for him, it contained 6 books. Mandy smiled triumphantly. That's different. How? I arrived first. That makes absolutely no sense. It makes enough sense. She looked at the titles in his basket. History, biography, fantasy novels, a mystery novel. The assortment surprised her. You read fantasy? You sound shocked. You don't seem like a dragon person. What's a dragon person? I don't know. Excellent definition. Mandy laughed. The nearby customer browsing cookbooks glanced over. She quickly lowered her voice. Sorry. Don't apologize. What if we're disturbing people? Sam looked around. The bookstore was half empty. One elderly man slept comfortably in a chair. A teenager sat reading near the window. Nobody appeared bothered. I think we're safe. I've been known to create disturbances. I believe that. You sound sarcastic. I saw you laugh at invisible superheroes on a beach. Mandy covered her face. Oh no. What? You witnessed that? Every second. I thought I was being subtle. Not remotely. Please tell me nobody else noticed. I can confidently say that several parents were trying to figure out why you kept laughing. Mandy groaned. That's embarrassing. It was entertaining. You enjoyed that far too much. I really did. Their eyes met. For a brief second, neither spoke. The moment wasn't awkward. Just comfortable. Unexpectedly comfortable. Sam broke the silence first. Coffee? She blinked. What? The store cafe. Oh. A ridiculous amount of happiness accompanied that single word. Coffee. Not a date. Probably. Just coffee. Definitely coffee. Maybe. Mandy quickly shut down that line of thinking. Sure. 20 minutes later they sat near the bookstore window. The lake was visible in the distance. People wandered along the boardwalk outside. For once, Mandy wasn't watching them. She was busy learning things she never knew about Sam. He had started Tae Kwon Do at age 11. His father had encouraged him after he got bullied. He eventually earned his instructor certification. The beach classes were free. Free? Mandy asked. Yeah. Why? Sam shrugged. The kids enjoy it. That's not financially sound. I realize you're a budget manager. Someone has to protect society. From charitable acts? From unprofitable charitable acts. Sam laughed again. The sound caused a strange flutter in her chest. She ignored it. Mostly. What about you? He asked. What about me? Your hobbies besides surveillance. It's observation. It's completely different. Explain. I watch people. That's literally surveillance. No, surveillance sounds creepy. You own a telescope. My parents bought it. I don't think that helps your defense. Mandy pointed at him. You are remarkably annoying. So I've been told. You seem normal at work. I am normal. You teach martial arts on a beach. Many people would argue that's healthier than collecting behavioral data from strangers. She couldn't argue with that. Unfortunately, they continued talking. Books led to movies. Movies led to travel stories. Travel stories led to embarrassing childhood memories. Hours seemed to disappear. Eventually Mandy glanced at the clock. Her eyes widened. We have been sitting here for almost 2 hours. Sam looked equally surprised. Really? Either we've broken time or we're old. Both are possible. Mandy smiled. Something about the conversation felt effortless. No forced small talk. No attempts to impress. No awkward performances. Just genuine conversation. The thing she'd been unsuccessfully searching for during years of dating. A dangerous realization. One she wasn't ready to examine too closely. Outside, evening sunlight reflected across the lake. Sam stood. I should probably go. Me too. They walked out together. The boardwalk bustled with activity. Families moved between restaurants. Cyclists followed the lakeside path. A live musician played near the food court. Mandy adjusted her book bag. Will you be teaching Saturday? Definitely. Good. The word escaped before she could stop it. Sam noticed. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Good. She felt herself blush. I mean, I know what you mean. You do. You're coming to observe your research subjects. Exactly. His grin widened. Of course. For some reason that made her smile too. They paused where the walkway split. His parking lot lay in one direction. Her townhouse in the other. For a moment neither moved. Then Sam nodded toward the lake. See you Saturday, Mandy. See you Saturday, Sam. As she walked home, she found herself looking at the crowds differently. For years she'd enjoyed observing people from a distance. Safe distance. Comfortable distance. But for the first time in a very long while, one person had become much more interesting up close. And that was beginning to complicate all of her calculations. Chapter 3. The observation problem. For the next 3 days, Mandy successfully avoided doing something stupid. This was an accomplishment. Unfortunately, she defined something stupid as showing up at the beach on Saturday more than 15 minutes early. As a result, she arrived only 14 minutes early. Much better, she muttered to herself as she walked across the sand. The beach was already beginning to wake up. Families claimed spots near the water. Early swimmers moved through the shallows. The scent of sunscreen and lake water drifted through the air. The Taekwondo class area remained mostly empty. Sam was setting up training pads when he noticed her. A smile immediately appeared. "Good morning." Mandy hated how much she liked hearing him say that. "Morning. You beat the students." "Barely. You were 14 minutes early." She stopped walking. "How do you know that?" "You looked at your watch before answering." "You noticed that?" "I'm an instructor." "What does that have to do with anything?" "We spend years watching people." Mandy narrowed her eyes. "Interesting." "What?" "I thought I was the observer." Sam laughed. "You are. But you're discovering other people can observe too." That should not have felt like a challenge. Yet somehow it did. "I'm excellent at reading people." "Really?" "Absolutely. You thought I was a quiet office robot." Mandy pointed at him. "You hid an entire martial arts career." "Career is a generous term. You teach an army of children. There are 22. That's basically an army." Sam chuckled and returned to arranging equipment. Mandy found herself smiling again. This was becoming a problem. By the time class started, children were arriving from every direction. Parents carried folding chairs. Kids raced across the sand. Several students noticed Mandy sitting near the regular spectators. A little girl with a green belt approached. "Are you new?" Mandy looked up. Apparently she was being interviewed. "I think so." The girl nodded seriously. "Mr. Sam knows everybody." "He does." "Yep." The child pointed toward the instructor. "He remembers birthdays too." Then she wandered away before Mandy could respond. Mandy watched Sam gather the class. The statement lingered. At work, he often seemed detached. Not unfriendly, just private. Here, every student clearly adored him. Another contradiction. Another reminder that people were more complicated than they appeared. The realization should have frustrated her. Instead, it fascinated her. After class ended, several parents approached Mandy. At first, she thought they needed something. Instead, one of them smiled warmly. "You're Mandy." Mandy blinked. "Yes." The woman looked pleased with herself. "I knew it." "How?" Before Mandy could ask, another parent walked over. "We've heard about you." Mandy nearly choked. "You've heard what?" The two exchanged a glance. Then both smiled. The kind of smile that immediately made a person nervous. "Oh dear," Mandy said. At that moment Sam appeared. "What happened?" One parent pointed at him. "We met Mandy." Sam's expression changed instantly. Not panic. Not exactly. But definitely concern. "Oh no." Mandy folded her arms. Interesting reaction. The parents laughed. One of them patted Sam's shoulder. "We'll let you two handle this." Then they walked away, leaving Mandy staring at him. Sam looked toward the sky, as though divine intervention might save him. Didn't. "What exactly have they heard?" Mandy asked. "Nothing important." "Samuel." His eyes widened. "You called me Samuel. Answer the question." He sighed. "Sometimes people ask who I'm talking about. And I mention things." "What things?" "Normal things." Mandy waited. Sam shifted his weight. "You know how you accidentally analyzed a family buying ice cream for 20 minutes? Her jaw dropped. "You told people that?" "It was funny. They don't know me. They know you now." "Oh, this is terrible." "It gets worse. There's more." "A little." She covered her face. "What else have you been telling strangers?" "Only that you're interesting." The statement came out so naturally that Mandy lowered her hands. For a second neither spoke. The beach sounds seemed distant. Children laughed near the water. Waves rolled against the shore. Somewhere behind them a dog barked. Sam looked slightly surprised by his own admission. Mandy felt warmth rise into her cheeks. Then, mercifully, he changed the subject. So, you never explained the telescope." Her embarrassment immediately shifted directions. "Oh, yeah, oh." He wasn't letting her escape. "There's not much to explain." "Mandy, I looked through it. I gathered that. At people. Also gathered." She sighed dramatically. "It sounds worse when you say it." "How should I say it?" She considered, then brightened. "Behavioral research." Sam stared. "That's your defense?" "It sounds professional. It sounds concerning." She laughed. The fact that she could laugh at herself around him felt surprisingly nice. Most people either misunderstood her hobby or judged it immediately. Sam simply found it amusing. Maybe because he understood the difference between curiosity and intrusion. Or maybe because he enjoyed teasing her. The evidence increasingly supported the second theory. A week later, Mandy learned that her telescope had created a new problem. It happened during her regular Sunday phone call with her mother. "So," her mother said, "have you talked to the handsome karate man again?" Mandy nearly spilled tea across her couch. "First, it's Taekwondo." "Same thing." "It's absolutely not." "Fine. The handsome Taekwondo man." Mandy groaned. "I cannot believe I told you about him." "You tell me everything." "That was my first mistake." Her mother ignored that. "Do you like him?" "I barely know him." "That's not what I asked." Mandy stared toward the lake outside her balcony. People moved along the boardwalk below. A couple walked hand in hand. Children chased each other across the beach. Simple scenes. Simple answers. Yet somehow she couldn't provide one. I think, she began slowly. Her mother waited. I think he's different than I expected. That's usually how people work. Mandy rolled her eyes. Thank you, philosopher queen. You're welcome. The older woman laughed. Then her voice softened. You know, sweetheart, you've spent a long time looking at life through windows. Mandy didn't answer, because the statement landed a little too close to the truth. Her mother continued. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to step outside once in a while. After the call ended, Mandy remained on her balcony. The telescope stood nearby. For years she'd enjoyed observing everyone else. Felt safe. Distance always felt safe. Distance prevented disappointment. Distance prevented mistakes. Distance prevented heartbreak. At least that was the theory. A text message appeared on her phone. Sam? Question. Mandy smiled immediately. Mandy? Answer. A moment later. Sam. Not how questions work. Mandy. Depends on who is asking. Sam. I'm planning next Saturday's class. Mandy. Okay. Sam. The students want to volunteer. Her stomach immediately tightened. Mandy. Absolutely not. The reply came almost instantly. Sam. I didn't even tell you what for. Mandy. Doesn't matter. Sam. Wise choice. Mandy. Thank you. Several seconds passed. Then another message appeared. Sam. They want to learn how to defend themselves from suspicious telescope operators. Mandy laughed out loud. A nearby seagull startled and flew away. She looked out across the lake. Then down at the message. Then back at the lake. For the first time in years, she wasn't interested in watching strangers. She was interested in talking to one particular person. And whether she wanted to admit it or not, that difference was starting to matter. Chapter 4. The tournament catastrophe. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Mandy was deep inside a quarterly budget review when her phone buzzed. Sam, need a favor. She stared at the screen suspiciously. Whenever someone began with those words, trouble usually followed. Mandy, depends on the favor. Sam, there's a regional tournament Saturday. Mandy, congratulations. Sam, that's not the favor. Mandy, good. I don't know enough about martial arts to congratulate properly. Several seconds passed. Then, Sam, come watch. Mandy blinked. She read the message twice. Then a third time. Why was that making her ridiculously happy? She typed carefully. Mandy, are you competing? Sam, demonstrating. Some of my students are competing. Mandy, and you need a favor? Sam, parents panic during tournaments. Mandy, understandable. Sam, I need one calm, sensible adult in the audience. Mandy laughed. Mandy, you picked the budget manager? Sam, exactly. Mandy, that's actually fair. A new message appeared. Sam, so? Mandy smiled. Mandy, fine. I'll be your designated sensible adult. Sam, excellent. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. The words lingered longer than they should have. Mandy set her phone down and tried to return to spreadsheets. Unfortunately, spreadsheets were significantly less interesting than Sam. Saturday morning began well, which, in hindsight, should have made Mandy suspicious. Nothing went wrong while driving to the tournament venue. Nothing went wrong while parking. Nothing went wrong while entering the large sports complex filled with competitors and spectators. The universe was clearly building momentum. The first problem appeared when she attempted to find Sam. Hundreds of people occupied the facility. White uniforms seemed to stretch in every direction. Children ran through hallways. Parents carried bags, folding chairs, snacks, and enough equipment to survive a small natural disaster. Mandy pulled out her phone. Mandy, where are you? A reply came immediately. Sam, Court 3. Simple. Helpful. Unfortunately, she had absolutely no idea where Court 3 was. After 10 minutes of wandering, she finally located a sign. Court 3 was directly behind her. Naturally, she arrived just as one of Sam's students finished a match. The little girl with the green belt from the beach spotted her first. Mandy! Several children turned. Then more. Suddenly half a dozen students were waving enthusiastically. Mandy waved back awkwardly. Apparently she had become known. This was mildly terrifying. Sam walked over. Without his glasses again. The unfairness of how different he looked continued to annoy her. Morning. Morning. You found us. Barely. I had faith. You shouldn't. I'll remember that. Mandy looked around. The students buzzed with nervous excitement. Parents checked schedules. Officials moved between competition areas. The atmosphere reminded her of organized chaos. Have you ever been to one of these? Sam asked. No. You're in for an experience. That should have served as a warning. Instead, she smiled. Big mistake. The first disaster occurred 40 minutes later. A volunteer directed Mandy toward a spectator section. She sat down, opened a bottled water, settled comfortably. then noticed every person around her was speaking to competitors. Specifically, one competitor, teenage boy. Eventually a woman beside her smiled. "How do you know Tyler?" Mandy frowned. "Who?" The woman's smile faded. "Tyler." Mandy looked around. The entire section appeared to belong to Tyler. An entire row of relatives stared back at her. "Oh." Understanding arrived. "This isn't court 3, is it?" "No." "Wonderful." 5 minutes later she escaped. Unfortunately, she escaped while carrying her open bottle of water. This led directly into catastrophe number 2. As she hurried through a crowd, someone backed up unexpectedly. Mandy swerved. The water bottle tilted. A stream of cold water arced gracefully through the air and landed directly onto the shoes of an elderly woman. Silence followed. Mandy froze. "Oh no." The woman looked down, then up, then down again. "I am so sorry." The elderly woman stared. A moment later she burst out laughing. The tension vanished instantly. "Honey, at my age I've survived worse than water." Relief flooded through Mandy. "Thank goodness." The woman studied her. "You aren't from around here. What gave it away?" "You look confused." "That's fair. Who are you here for?" Mandy smiled. "Sam Preston." The response transformed the woman's expression. Her eyes lit up immediately. "Oh." Mandy became nervous again. "Oh." The woman grabbed her arm. "I've heard about you." Mandy nearly walked into a wall. "No." "Yes." "No." "Absolutely." Mandy closed her eyes. This was becoming a theme. "What exactly have you heard?" The woman looked delighted. "That depends." "On what?" "Are you his girlfriend?" Mandy's face immediately became lava. "What?" The woman shrugged. "It's a reasonable question." "No, it isn't." "It certainly is. We're friends." The woman smiled knowingly. Mandy disliked that smile. Very much. "Friends." "Yes. MHM. Actual friends." The smile somehow became worse. Before Mandy could defend herself further, the tournament announcer called competitors to several rings. The elderly woman finally released her. "Go find your young man. He isn't my—" But the woman was already laughing. By the time Mandy located court 3 again, she was flustered. Sam noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" "No." That answer surprised him. "What happened?" Mandy pointed dramatically. "People have apparently been talking." Sam looked guilty. Instantly guilty. The expression alone confirmed it. "Oh. You." "It might not entirely be me." "You." "Mostly me." Mandy groaned. The students nearby were trying not to laugh. "Traitors. Every one of them." "What are you telling people?" "Nothing bad." "That was not my question." One of the parents walked over. "Is this about Mrs. Patterson?" Mandy pointed. "It was Mrs. Patterson." The parent laughed. "Oh no. That isn't reassuring." The parent patted her shoulder sympathetically. "Nobody escapes Mrs. Patterson." "Wonderful. She tried to convince me I was engaged once." Mandy stared. "How?" "I still don't know." Then the parent walked away, leaving Mandy with more questions than answers. Sam rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry." "You should be." "I really am." She tried to remain annoyed. Unfortunately, he looked genuinely apologetic. Worse, he looked adorable, which made remaining annoyed nearly impossible. Finally she sighed. "Fine. Fine. Mrs. Patterson is clearly a force of nature." A grin appeared. "She really is. And if she approaches me again, I'm running." Smart strategy. Their eyes met. The easy smile returned. So did the strange flutter in Mandy's chest. The increasingly familiar one. The final event of the day was a demonstration led by Sam. Mandy found a seat. An actual seat this time. The students performed forms together. The precision impressed her. Then Sam joined them. What followed was easily the most impressive thing she'd ever seen him do. Movements flowed together effortlessly. Power and control blended into something almost artistic. The audience applauded loudly when the demonstration ended. Mandy found herself standing, cheering, without hesitation, without embarrassment, without observing from a distance. Sam glanced toward the crowd. His eyes found hers immediately. The smile that followed wasn't the polite one from work. It wasn't even the instructor smile from the beach. It was something warmer, something meant specifically for her. And for one brief moment, everything else in the crowded arena seemed to disappear. They left the tournament together several hours later. The late afternoon sun reflected off the lake as they walked toward their cars. "You survived," Sam said. "Barely. I told you it was an experience." "You failed to mention the grandmother interrogations." He laughed. "I assumed that was obvious." "It was not." They stopped beside Mandy's car. The conversation should have ended there. Instead, neither moved. Finally Sam spoke. "Thanks for coming." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. "Of course. The kids liked having you there." Mandy smiled. "I liked being there." A quiet moment settled between them. Comfortable. Easy. Dangerously nice. Then Sam tilted his head slightly. You know. What? I think you've stopped observing. She frowned. What does that mean? You used to watch everything. And now? His smile softened. Now you're participating. For once, Mandy didn't have a clever comeback. Because the worst part was that he was right. And somewhere deep down, she was beginning to think that might be the best thing that had happened to her in years. Chapter 5. Variables and unknowns. The problem with feelings, Mandy decided, was that they refused to behave like spreadsheets. Spreadsheets followed rules. You entered information. You analyzed results. You reached conclusions. Simple. Feelings, on the other hand, appeared determined to ignore logic entirely. 3 weeks after the tournament, Mandy found herself sitting on her balcony, staring at her telescope without actually using it. That alone should have alarmed her. For years, the telescope had been one of her favorite possessions. Now it mostly gathered dust. Her attention had shifted elsewhere, specifically toward a quiet man who taught martial arts on Saturday mornings and somehow occupied an increasing amount of her thoughts during the rest of the week. Her phone buzzed. Mom. Mandy answered immediately. Hello. How's your handsome martial artist? Mandy groaned. Why do I answer these calls? Because you love me. Unfortunately. Her mother laughed. So what? Don't play games with me. I'm 34 years old. And somehow you still think I don't recognize that tone. What tone? The one where you like someone. Mandy sank lower into her chair. Across the beach below, children ran through the sand while families enjoyed the late afternoon sunshine. Mom. Yes, we're friends. MHM. There it was again. The sound. That infuriating little noise older women made when they absolutely did not believe a word being spoken. We are. Of course. You're impossible. I've had decades of practice. Mandy smiled despite herself. Nothing has happened. Yet. Mom. I'm just saying your father and I are enjoying the story. You and Dad discuss this? Oh honey. The laughter in her mother's voice was immediate. We have entire conversations. Mandy covered her face. This is a betrayal. It's family entertainment. The following Saturday, the beach class ended later than usual. A group of students had stayed afterward to practice. Mandy found herself helping clean up equipment. Not because anyone had asked. She simply stayed. The realization struck her halfway through stacking training pads. She wasn't finding excuses to leave anymore. Sam carried several kicking shields toward a storage trailer. Thanks. For what? Helping. Mandy shrugged. You looked outnumbered. There were 3 students. I stand by my statement. Sam smiled. One of the younger boys raced past them. Bye, Mr. Sam. See you next week. Another student waved. Then another. Then another. By the time the last family departed, Mandy had witnessed nearly 20 individual goodbyes. She shook her head. You're basically a celebrity. I absolutely am not. They love you. His expression softened. They're good kids. The answer was immediate. Honest. Simple. Mandy watched him for a moment. There was something increasingly difficult about reconciling the different versions of Sam she discovered. The office worker, the instructor, the friend. The common thread wasn't confidence or competence. It was kindness. The realization surprised her. Because kindness was easy to fake in small doses, harder to fake consistently, for months, or years, especially when nobody expected recognition. You okay? Sam asked. She realized she'd been staring. Again. Her specialty. Question. His eyes narrowed immediately. That sounds dangerous. It is. Oh good. Mandy crossed her arms. Why do you hide? Sam blinked. Hide. At work. His smile faded slightly. Not in a bad way. More thoughtful. You make it sound dramatic. You know what I mean. He looked toward the lake. The breeze pushed across the water between them. For several moments he said nothing. Then he exhaled. I spent most of my 20s trying very hard not to attract attention. That wasn't the answer she'd expected. Why? Sam considered. You ever walk into a room and feel like everyone expects something from you? Frequently. Imagine that all the time. Mandy nodded slowly. She understood that. Very well. Instructor stuff? She asked. Partly. He sat down on a nearby bench overlooking the beach. Mandy sat beside him. There was a period where I was competing, he said. You never told me that. I don't tell many people. Why not? Sam laughed softly. Because I learned something. What? The attention was nice for about 5 minutes. Then it became exhausting. Mandy smiled. That actually sounded like him. So you disappeared. Mostly. You picked the background. He nodded. The background is peaceful. The answer made sense. Maybe too much sense. Because Mandy suddenly realized she had done something similar. Using observation instead of participation. Watching instead of risking. Standing safely outside of life whenever possible. Different methods. Same goal. Protection. You know something funny? She said. Sam looked at her. What? I thought you were boring. He laughed immediately. I know. No, I mean really boring. Thank you. I thought your biggest hobby was organizing paperclips. You've mentioned this. You gave off that vibe. I was unaware there was a paperclip vibe. There definitely is. Sam shook his head, then looked out toward the water. What did you think after the beach? Mandy hesitated. The honest answer felt strangely vulnerable, but she gave it anyway. I realized I didn't know anything. His expression shifted. Softer. More serious. What do you mean? I make assumptions about people. The admission came easier than expected. All the time. Sam listened quietly. I see pieces of people and convince myself I understand them. The lake shimmered in the afternoon sunlight. Families moved along the boardwalk. Laughter drifted across the beach. Yet somehow the moment felt private. I've done it my entire life, Mandy continued. I think everyone does. Maybe. But after enough bad relationships, you start wondering if you're the common denominator. She laughed softly, without humor. That's not a wonderful realization. No, it isn't. For a moment neither spoke. Then Sam answered. You know what I think? Mandy looked at him. What? I think you're harder on yourself than anyone else would be. She opened her mouth to object. He raised a hand. No. Sam. Nope. I haven't even talked yet. I know. His smile returned. That's why I interrupted. She rolled her eyes. What a shock. I'm very brave. Questionable claim. Fair. His smile faded into something gentler. You came to the beach because you realized your first impression of me was wrong. Yes. Most people would have ignored that. Mandy frowned. What do you mean? They'd protect their ego. The answer surprised her. You didn't. He looked directly at her. You got curious. A strange warmth settled in her chest. Different from attraction. Though that was certainly present. This felt deeper. Being understood. Maybe even appreciated. It was unfamiliar enough to leave her temporarily speechless. A situation Sam appeared to find hilarious. There it is. What? I finally found a topic that shuts you up. Oh, that's rude. A little. A lot. Maybe. She bumped his shoulder lightly. He laughed. The sound carried across the lakeside breeze. For a moment everything felt wonderfully simple. Then a familiar voice interrupted. Oh my goodness. Both of them turned. Mrs. Patterson stood 10 feet away holding a folding chair. The elderly woman looked delighted. Absolutely delighted. Mandy immediately knew trouble had arrived. Mrs. Patterson pointed triumphantly. I knew it. Mandy closed her eyes. Sam groaned. The older woman nodded enthusiastically. You're sitting together. We're friends, Mandy said automatically. Mrs. Patterson smiled. The same terrifying smile from the tournament. Of course you are. Then she continued walking, completely unconvinced. Mandy watched her leave. That woman is unstoppable. Sam laughed so hard he nearly fell off the bench. And despite every effort to maintain her dignity, Mandy found herself laughing too. The conversation eventually moved on. The afternoon continued. The world kept turning. Yet later that evening, sitting alone on her balcony, one thought lingered longer than the others. For years she'd believed the hardest part of relationships was learning who someone really was. Now she was beginning to suspect an even harder challenge existed. Admitting how much someone was starting to matter. Chapter 6. The Wrong Equation. Mandy should have known she was in trouble the moment she started making assumptions again. Unfortunately, she didn't recognize the warning signs until she was already halfway through constructing an entire fictional narrative inside her head. The process began innocently enough, which was exactly how her bad ideas always started. It was a Wednesday afternoon. She had escaped the office for lunch and walked along the boardwalk near the lake with a sandwich in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. The weather was perfect. Warm sunshine, gentle breeze, blue water stretching across the horizon. As she rounded a corner near a lakeside cafe, she spotted a familiar figure. Sam. He sat at one of the outdoor tables. Nothing unusual about that, until she noticed he wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him. Pretty. About his age. Dark hair. Easy smile. The two appeared deeply engaged in conversation. Sam laughed. The woman laughed. Then she reached across the table and touched his arm. A small gesture. Brief. Normal. Yet something unpleasant twisted inside Mandy's chest. She slowed her pace. Immediately hated herself for slowing. Then kept watching anyway. Old habits. The woman said something. Sam smiled. The smile looked genuine. Comfortable. Familiar. Mandy turned away before she could see more. For reasons she preferred not to examine. The rational explanation should have been obvious. Sam was allowed to have female friends. He was allowed to know women. He was allowed to sit in public without providing advance notice to Mandy Page. A perfectly reasonable conclusion. Unfortunately, her emotions were not participating in reason. By the time she returned to the office, several less reasonable possibilities had already established themselves. Maybe it was a girlfriend. Maybe someone he was dating. Maybe someone he liked. Maybe... Mandy! She looked up. A coworker stood in her office doorway. What? The budget report? Oh, right. Work. Numbers. Reality. She forced herself back into the present. For approximately 6 minutes. Then her mind wandered again. Things became worse on Saturday. Naturally. That morning she arrived at the beach to discover Sam talking to the exact same woman. The universe, apparently sensing dramatic potential, had decided to provide additional evidence. The woman stood beside him near the training area. They were laughing. Again. Mandy immediately felt foolish for noticing. Then even more foolish for caring. When Sam spotted her, his face brightened. He waved. Normally she would have walked over immediately. Today she hesitated. Only briefly, but long enough for him to notice. By the time she approached, the woman was gathering equipment into a bag. "Morning, Mandy," Sam said. "Morning." Something about her tone sounded off even to her own ears. The woman smiled politely. "Hi. Hi." A wonderfully awkward exchange. One word each. Magnificent social skills all around. "This is Rachel," Sam said. Rachel extended a hand. "Mandy. Nice to meet you." "You too." Complete lie. Not because Rachel seemed unpleasant. Actually, she seemed perfectly nice, which somehow made the situation worse. The conversation lasted less than a minute before Rachel excused herself and headed toward the parking lot. Sam looked after her, then back at Mandy. An unreadable expression crossed his face. "You okay?" "Fine." The answer came too fast. His eyebrows rose slightly, a sure sign he didn't believe her. Unfortunately, he didn't push, which disappointed her for reasons that made no sense whatsoever. The following week became an exercise in mutual frustration. Mandy told herself she was being mature. This was untrue. Instead of talking to Sam, she quietly pulled back. Not dramatically, just enough. Fewer text messages, shorter conversations, less initiative. Nothing obvious. At least she hoped it wasn't obvious. The problem was that Sam paid attention. More attention than she'd realized. By Thursday evening, he knew something was wrong. By Friday afternoon, he appeared increasingly annoyed. The final straw arrived Saturday morning. Mandy arrived at the beach. She sat with the parents and successfully avoided approaching Sam for nearly 20 minutes. A record. Unfortunately, it was apparently noticeable. Class ended. Families departed. Equipment was collected. Eventually Mandy stood to leave. A voice stopped her. "Mandy." She turned. Sam stood several feet away. His expression was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm people used right before difficult conversations. "Oh. Walk with me." Not a question. A request. Possibly an order. She couldn't tell. Either way, she followed him. They headed toward a quieter section of shoreline. The lake stretched peacefully beside them. Neither spoke for a minute. Finally Sam exhaled. "Okay." The word carried remarkable patience. Mandy immediately became nervous. "Okay. What happened?" Confusion briefly saved her. "What do you mean?" "Mandy." There was that tone again. Patient. Direct. Almost impossible to dodge. "You've spent 2 weeks acting like I accidentally kicked your dog." She couldn't help laughing. Caught off guard. "What? You heard me. I don't own a dog." "Exactly." The corners of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "But you're definitely upset." Mandy looked away. Toward the water. Anywhere except him. "Nothing's wrong." That was convincing. It should have been. It wasn't. Silence followed. Long enough to become uncomfortable. Then Sam stopped walking. "Mandy." She finally looked at him. His expression contained more frustration than she'd ever seen. Not anger. Just genuine frustration. And concern. "Talk to me." 3 simple words. Yet somehow they broke through every defensive wall she'd spent 2 weeks constructing. Because she suddenly realized something embarrassing. Very embarrassing. She didn't want to lose this. The friendship. The conversations. Him. And that fear had convinced her to avoid the conversation entirely. A strategy that was clearly working horribly. She sighed. "You had lunch with somebody." Sam blinked. "What?" The response seemed genuinely confused. "At the cafe." He stared. The confusion lasted several seconds. Then realization arrived. "Oh." Mandy suddenly wanted the lake to swallow her. Immediately. "You saw Rachel." There it was. Rachel. Named. Real. Existing. Mandy crossed her arms. An unfortunate habit. "Yes." Sam looked at the sky, then at the lake, then back at her. And to her complete surprise, he started laughing. Not politely. Not gently. Actually laughing. "Wow. What? You really thought?" He stopped, still laughing. Mandy narrowed her eyes. "This is not funny." "It's a little funny." "It isn't." "It absolutely is." She pointed accusingly. "I've been miserable." That finally reduced his laughter. Mostly. "Oh. You could at least pretend this is serious." "I'm trying." He failed immediately and laughed again. Mandy scowled, which only made things worse. Finally he managed to compose himself. "Breathe." "I'm breathing." "Barely." "Explain Rachel." His smile softened. Immediately. Completely. "Rachel is my cousin." Mandy froze. The beach suddenly became extremely interesting. So, cousin. Very much cousin. Oh, yep. Oh, still cousin. Mandy covered her face. This is horrific. Sam laughed again. I tried to warn you. You did not. I asked what was wrong. That isn't a warning. Fair. Her embarrassment felt almost physical. Weeks. She had spent weeks worrying. For absolutely no reason. I'm an idiot. No. Sam. No. I absolutely am. He shook his head. You're human. Don't be nice. I don't deserve nice. The smile he gave her was unexpectedly gentle. You know what's funny? What? You spent months telling me you make assumptions about people. Mandy groaned. Please stop. And then you immediately did it again. Please. Without asking a single question. Samuel. His grin widened. Now I know you're embarrassed. She couldn't even argue. Because he was completely right. The worst part? Not the misunderstanding. Not the embarrassment. Not even the cousin revelation. The worst part was realizing why she'd cared so much. Why the sight of him with another woman had bothered her. Why the thought of losing him had hurt. The answer stood directly in front of her. And for the first time, she couldn't hide from it. The realization settled slowly between them. Neither said it aloud. Not yet. But something had changed. The distance she'd created over the past 2 weeks was gone. And judging by the look in Sam's eyes, he knew exactly why. For once, neither of them seemed quite ready to discuss it. But sooner or later, they would have to. Because some equations eventually solve themselves. Whether you were ready for the answer or not. Chapter 7. Clearer focus. The awkwardness after the Rachel incident lasted exactly 3 days. Which, considering the circumstances, was surprisingly efficient. By Tuesday evening, Mandy and Sam were texting normally again. By Thursday, they were arguing about books. By Friday, he had sent her a picture of one of his students attempting to do a cartwheel and accidentally rolling sideways across the sand. Everything felt normal. Except it wasn't. Because now both of them knew. Maybe not every detail. Maybe not every feeling. But enough. Enough to recognize that something had shifted. Enough to realize neither of them could hide behind friendship forever. The problem was finding a way to say it. The annual Lake Hawthorne Summer Festival arrived that weekend. The event was impossible to avoid. Every business along the lakeshore participated. Food vendors lined the boardwalk. Live music played from several stages. Fireworks were scheduled for the evening. The entire shoreline looked like a postcard. Mandy had attended every year since moving to town. Usually alone. Usually carrying a book. Usually spending as much time people watching as participating. This year felt different before it even started. She was meeting Sam. Not accidentally. Not coincidentally. Intentionally. That distinction mattered. More than she wanted to admit. She arrived shortly before noon. The boardwalk buzzed with activity. Children carried balloons. Couples strolled hand in hand. Food aromas drifted from every direction imaginable. The festival map claimed there were 40 vendors. Mandy believed there were at least 1,000. Her phone buzzed. Sam by the fountain. She looked up and immediately spotted him. He stood near the large stone fountain at the center of the boardwalk. Glasses on. Jeans. Blue polo shirt. Completely normal. Yet her heart still managed an embarrassing little jump. Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. She walked toward him. Hi. His smile appeared instantly. Hi. For a moment they simply stood there. Both smiling. Neither moving. Finally Sam gestured toward the festival. Ready? Probably not. Good. That doesn't sound reassuring. It means we're equally prepared. They started walking. The first 2 hours were easy. Comfortable. Fun. Exactly what spending time together had become. They sampled food from entirely too many vendors. Disagreed about the quality of kettle corn. Agreed that fried cheese curds should probably be illegal. Laughed at a magician whose tricks worked only about half the time. At one point, Mandy realized she hadn't thought about work once. Not once. That felt miraculous. They stopped near the water to watch a sailing demonstration. A few moments later, Sam handed her a cold lemonade. She accepted it automatically, then paused. I didn't see you buy this. I know. You just appeared with lemonade. Correct. Mandy narrowed her eyes. Suspicious. I used money. Can anyone verify that? Several people nearby laughed. Sam pointed dramatically. Witnesses. They can't be trusted. This is why nobody takes accountants seriously. I take accountants seriously. You're an accountant. Exactly. His laugh made her smile. Again. Always. The realization struck unexpectedly. At some point, being around Sam had become one of her favorite parts of the week. Not a special occasion. Not an exciting event. Just something she genuinely looked forward to. That realization should have been comforting. Instead it made her nervous. Because favorite things carried risks. Losing them hurt. As afternoon faded into evening, crowds became denser. Music echoed along the shoreline. The lake reflected gold and orange from the lowering sun. Eventually they found a quieter stretch of beach away from the main festival area. The sounds of the crowd softened behind them. Waves rolled gently onto the sand. For several minutes neither spoke. The comfortable silence returned. The one they had developed over months. Then Mandy surprised herself. "I talked to my mom." Sam laughed immediately. "Should I be worried?" "Probably." "Very concerning answer. She likes you." "That's nice. She has entire conversations about you." His eyes widened. "What? With my father?" "Oh no." "Exactly." Sam looked horrified. "Mandy enjoyed that far too much. They discuss us like a television show. That's not normal." "I never claimed it was." He shook his head, then smiled. "I like them. You've met them once. They were nice. They interrogated you. Politely. Still interrogated. A little." The smile lingered, then slowly faded. A thoughtful expression replaced it. "Mandy." Something in his voice made her look over. "What?" He hesitated. An unfamiliar sight. Normally Sam wasn't afraid of conversations, but this one clearly mattered. And suddenly her pulse quickened. "I've been thinking about something." "Oh no." The thought arrived instantly. Not because she knew what he was going to say, because she hoped she did. Dangerous difference. "What?" she asked quietly. Sam looked out toward the water, then back at her. "You remember what I said after the tournament?" "Maybe. You were participating instead of observing." The memory returned immediately. She nodded. "I remember." His smile was small, almost nervous. "I think you've changed." The statement surprised her. "How?" "You take chances now." She laughed softly. "I chased a misunderstanding about your cousin for 2 weeks. Besides that." "Good save." "I'm trying." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. Sam took a breath, then continued. "You used to watch everything from a distance." The lake breeze lifted strands of her hair. Neither looked away. "Now you're actually living it." The words settled gently between them. For once, Mandy didn't deflect with humor. Didn't dodge. Didn't hide. Instead, she answered honestly. "You know why?" He waited. "Because of you." The admission escaped before she could reconsider it. Silence followed. Not awkward. Not uncomfortable. Just real. For the first time since meeting him, there was nowhere left to retreat. Sam's expression softened. Completely. "Mandy." She laughed nervously. "See, now I've gone and done it." "Done what?" Said the scary thing. His smile returned. A different smile. One she'd never seen before. Warm. Certain. "Then I should probably say one too." Her heart hammered. "What scary thing?" Sam looked directly at her. "You became the person I most wanted to talk to." The world seemed to pause. The distant music. The festival noise. The waves. Everything. For one perfect moment. "You did?" she asked. His laugh was quiet. "Every day." "Oh. MHM." Mandy looked down at the sand, then back at him. A smile slowly spreading across her face. The kind she couldn't suppress even if she tried. "I was supposed to be good at reading people." Sam grinned. "You're improving." "That's rude." "A little. A lot. Fair." She laughed, then shook her head. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I spent years watching everybody else live their lives." The lake shimmered behind him in the fading sunlight. And the one person worth paying attention to was already standing right in front of me. For a moment neither moved. Neither spoke. The smile said enough. The understanding said the rest. Above the lake, the first fireworks suddenly exploded across the evening sky. Bright colors reflected across the water. Behind them, the crowd cheered. Neither looked away, because after months of missed signals, mistaken assumptions, and endless observation, they had finally managed to see each other clearly. Chapter 8. No more observing. Autumn arrived slowly around Lake Hawthorne. The summer crowds thinned first. Then the boats disappeared from the water. The beach umbrellas vanished. The trees around the shoreline gradually exchanged green for shades of gold, orange, and red. Mandy had always loved this time of year. For the first time, she found herself enjoying it with someone else. The adjustment was still surprisingly wonderful, and occasionally strange. Mostly because she was still getting used to the fact that Sam Preston was now her boyfriend. Even after 3 months, the title sometimes caught her off guard. Not in a bad way. Just in the kind of way that made her smile unexpectedly while standing in line at a grocery store. Or while sitting through budget meetings. Or while looking at her phone and finding a text message waiting. Especially then. Monday morning found Mandy sitting in her office reviewing forecasts when her phone buzzed. She glanced down. "Sam." "Important question." Mandy immediately smiled. "Mandy." "Define important." "Sam." "Emergency level important." "Mandy." "Should I call authorities?" "Sam." "Maybe." "Mandy." "What's the question?" There was a brief pause. Then, "Sam, if I accidentally bought 6 books instead of 1, is that a tax deduction?" Mandy laughed loud enough to startle herself. A coworker passing her office looked inside. "You okay?" "Apparently not." The coworker nodded. "Fair." then continued walking. Mandy looked at her phone again. Mandy, no. Sam, what if they were educational? Mandy, still no. Sam, what if education happened accidentally? She shook her head. Some people flirted with compliments. Some people flirted with poetry. Apparently she and Sam flirted with accounting jokes. Life was weird. She liked it. Saturday mornings remained beach mornings. Only now Mandy arrived beside Sam instead of watching from a balcony. The students had adjusted quickly. Children, she had learned, accepted changes faster than adults. One of the younger boys had spotted them holding hands exactly one time. The following week, everyone simply acted as if the information had always existed. The parents were another matter, especially Mrs. Patterson. The elderly woman approached them one sunny morning carrying a travel mug. Her expression radiated victory. Complete victory. I knew it. Mandy groaned immediately. Sam laughed. Mrs. Patterson pointed triumphantly between them. Months ago. We know, Sam said. I told everyone. We know. I was right. You were. The older woman smiled broadly, then wandered away looking deeply satisfied. Mandy watched her go. I think dating us may have completed her life goals. Sam laughed so hard he had to sit down. Some things changed. Some things didn't. Work remained work. Budgets remained budgets. Machines still filled the manufacturing plant with noise and activity. Mandy still buried herself in spreadsheets when deadlines approached. The difference was what happened afterward. One evening, after a particularly long day, she returned home carrying enough stress to qualify as checked luggage. The townhouse felt unusually quiet. She stepped onto her balcony with a cup of tea. The lake stretched below. The familiar view greeted her. Boardwalk, beach, water, people. For years this balcony had been her favorite place, her hiding place, her observation post. The telescope still stood exactly where it always had, untouched. Mandy smiled. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Sam stepped onto the balcony carrying a takeout bag. I brought food. You're a hero. I know. Did you wear a cape? I left it at the beach. She laughed. The old Clark Kent joke had never fully disappeared. Nor should it. Some traditions deserved preservation. Sam handed her dinner, then leaned against the railing beside her. For several minutes they simply watched the lake. Comfortable silence. One of their favorite things. Eventually Sam noticed the telescope. I don't think you've used that in weeks. Mandy followed his gaze. He was right. Maybe months. Huh. Retired. She considered the question, then shook her head. No. Just taking a break? Something like that. The evening breeze moved across the water. Lights from lakeside businesses reflected across the darkening lake. A familiar scene, yet somehow entirely different than before. You know, Mandy said, I used to think this was enough. Sam looked at her. The balcony? The observing. She rested her arms on the railing. For a long time I convinced myself watching was safer. His expression softened. And now, Mandy smiled. A genuine smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Now I think I was missing the best part. The answer seemed to make him happy. It definitely made her happy. Because it was true. Watching life wasn't the same as living it. Analyzing people wasn't the same as knowing them. Distance wasn't the same as safety. Sometimes distance simply meant loneliness. A lesson that had taken her longer than she'd like to admit. Later that evening, after dinner, they sat together on the balcony. The lake was quiet. Stars reflected off the water. The town hummed softly in the distance. Mandy rested her head against Sam's shoulder. A simple gesture. One she never would have imagined herself making a year earlier. Or even 6 months earlier. Funny how much could change. You know what's strange? She asked. What? If my parents hadn't bought me that telescope. Sam laughed. We would have eventually met. We already knew each other. Exactly. She looked up at him. But I wouldn't have seen you. The distinction mattered. Because technically she had seen him every day at work. Yet she hadn't really known him. Not until that Saturday morning. Not until she challenged her own assumptions. Not until she decided to leave the balcony and walk down to the beach. Sam smiled. You gave me a chance. You gave me one too. Fair. For a moment they sat quietly. Then Mandy glanced toward the telescope one last time. The instrument that had changed everything. A gift from her parents. A tool for observation. A reminder. People were complicated. Surprising. Impossible to fully understand from a distance. And sometimes the most important thing you could do was take a closer look. Not through a lens, but in person. Mandy looked out across the moonlit lake. Then back at the man beside her. The future suddenly felt less like something to analyze and more like something to experience. For once, she didn't need calculations. She didn't need predictions. She didn't need certainty. She was exactly where she wanted to be. And that was enough.